Monster films have been around for a long time, with the first monster film being created during the silent era called Le Manoir du Diable, released in 1896 according to Zabi.com. This genre of film has a lasting legacy in cinema. Dracula, The Wolfman, The Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon, The Invisible Man, and the list grew as the genre continued to evolve throughout history. Then we can't forget the film that brought death to life for 1930s moviegoers.
Terror into the hearts of men.
The original Frankenstein film was released in 1931 by Universal Pictures as they were on a run with releasing monster films. I'm not going to go into a breakdown of the older film as to not get off topic for this video. However, I will say that from my knowledge, because I'm not a huge monster film fan, when I usually see monster films, they usually feel like a reflection of us as humans or a reflection of society. So when I watched Frankenstein released on Netflix that was directed and written by Guillermo del Toro, I was really inspired to write this video because I really enjoyed how it leaned into the theme of seeing a reflection of oneself, and I feel that it actually was the entire point of the film and was really well rounded in presenting that to the viewer. So walk with me, talk with me as I give you my view on Frankenstein released in 2025. Before I continue, I wanted to give a quick review of the foundations for the Frankenstein film released in 2025. This film is based on the Gothic novel written by Mary Shelley titled Frankenstein or The Modern Prometheus, which according to Wikipedia had 3 editions, aka volumes. The first edition was published anonymously on January 1st, 1818, and the second edition was published in Paris in 1821, where her name first appears, and I believe that the third edition was released in 1831, which was a revised version of the novel that included significant stylistic revisions, a new preface describing the story's concept, and a more explicitly moral tone. So this film isn't a remake of the Universal Pictures film released in 1931, but an adaptation of the OG story of Frankenstein. If you can spare the extra coin, I say it could definitely be a cool read that I may check out myself, but even if you can't, it is available for free on Google Books to download as a PDF if you want to check it out. I'll add the link in the description below. So now that we understand the foundation of which Frankenstein 2025 was built upon, let's begin to analyze the structure and design of the house as well as the occupants that live within it. Major spoiler warning if you haven't seen the film yet, definitely watch it before watching this video. Victor is the creature and the creature is Victor. They are one and the same, 2 sides of the same coin. Both of their tales represent someone who wants to fill a hole in their heart from loss and what happens when they are left to darkness within their own thoughts. Victor's tale comes first, but we only see that their stories are no different once we hear the creature's tale. Victor is a man who, as a child, lived in a household where he could only find love from his mother, Claire Frankenstein. His father, Leopold Frankenstein, was his father out of pure convenience and politics, which was most likely a common thing back then, so Victor will receive no connection from his father. He saw Victor as someone who carries his name and doesn't want him to stain it, so he teaches him all he knows, the ins and outs of the human anatomy, while also reminding him that the human body has no emotion, so he sprinkles in a bit of a lesson on his apathy. It seems as though Victor and his mother were fine with the way things were, as long as they had each other, but that all came to a head when Claire passed away during childbirth, bringing William into the world. All of a sudden, the father understood kindness and gave it all to William, Victor's brother, leaving Victor to be an outsider in his own home as he mourned his mother every single day after her passing. The father didn't care and the brother didn't know the mother, so he couldn't relate to Victor's pain. Victor had no choice but to mourn alone, while at the same time not receiving the same love and companionship his mother gave him. I say companionship because I feel their connection extended outside of the mother and son relationship that they had because of their experiences with Leopold. They both experienced the control and heaviness that Leopold had had over them and their household. I feel being able to relate in that way allowed a more complex connection between them than that automatic connection that comes with a mother and son relationship, especially when we see that neither Victor or his mother had any friends from what we were shown, which could have been a voluntary action or the father forcing them into isolation to have control, or just the side effects of being filthy rich during that time. To continue, because Victor was left to his own resentment and hurt, he started to come up with the story that his father basically killed his mother, because how could someone who is known as the best surgeon have failed to save a patient? How could the same father who required nothing but perfection have failed and been okay with it? He didn't expect this tyrant to grieve his mother because there was no love in his heart for her anyway, but the same man that whips his hand for not remembering the tibia from the fibula and expresses the seriousness of the survival of the patient doesn't bat an eye when he loses one, when he fails. He doesn't beat himself over the head on how he wasn't perfect, he just moves on. To Victor, this is not the man he grew up knowing, so there could only be one explanation. She was killed. And once Victor brought this conclusion to his father did the usual nonchalant response and told Victor, "You can't defeat death." And at that moment, Victor decided that he would be better than his father and do what he couldn't. But deep down, I feel in that moment, what he truly decided was that he would fill the hole in his heart with resentment, because if he could not have love, he would express himself with rage. He would use the hate that he had for his father to do the impossible, and he would do so being just like his father, precise, discreet, and measured. Leopold wanted another son to love, and Victor wanted to feel his mother's love through defeating death, because as he said himself, that she who was life was now death, doing anything that they had to do to reach their goal, even at the cost of a life. I don't think Victor's father just left her to die. However, I do feel like the baby was the priority to him over the mother. So I feel that maybe the scene where we see Victor trying to bring the creature to life and accidentally taking out Heinrich Hollander, his brother's father-in-law, was a visual metaphor for how the birth went. Victor tried to save Heinrich, and it's possible that it was because he had the last piece of the puzzle dangling from his foot. However, he did try to save him. But once Heinrich was dead, there was no empathy. To Victor, Heinrich's death was an inconvenience that annoyed him, which is most likely how his father saw his mother. Victor was more like his father than he cared to admit, because I feel he didn't realize that in order to be better than his father, which was the reasoning that he told himself, he had to be like his father. This is a classic case of wanting to be better, but in the end, you become like the thing or person you're trying to be. Fight fire with fire, and that he did. But in doing so, he birthed and raised not the creature, but another him. Victor sought to defeat death, but in turn only conjured a reflection of himself, a reflection that he would try to cover up and avoid and then shatter. The creature was shown love by Victor from the moment he was created, but once Victor realized that in defeating death, he can replace the hole that was left by his mother's passing, that feeling of loneliness all came flooding back to him. He had lost his patience with this pursuit he now realized is futile. The one who could possibly fill that hole in his heart, Elizabeth and William's fiance, yes, it's messy, distanced herself from him. What made it worse was that she showed a connection with the creature, but she didn't want one with him. What was supposed to make him feel less alone isolated him even more. So there was only one solution. He had to abandon the son he had birthed, leaving him to feel alone before what Victor thought was his final moments. But the creature escaped, and he went through something very similar to Victor. He had lost a parent he loved, but found a blind man who could have possibly filled that hole, only for him to be taken away. The blind man was killed by a pack of wolves, and the creature was blamed for his death. That led to him being killed and realizing that he couldn't die. Because he couldn't die, he couldn't receive the release other people had, so that's when he tracked down Victor and asked him for someone he could spend his everlasting life with. I feel this was the first time Victor was confronted by the reflection he had created, aka the creature. In the film, Victor literally faces the mirror to tie up his bow tie and is faced by the creature right after, and he was repulsed by it because of how it revealed what he truly felt. I feel it's no coincidence that after Elizabeth confronted Victor and told him not to lie about wishing her and his brother the very best because he loved her and wanted to be with her, it's possible that he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her. He is then confronted by the creature and how he would like to have a companion that would understand him and that he could spend his life with. But instead of Victor facing these feelings he had and seeing his reflection for what it was, he decided decided to cover it up and try to avoid it, labeling it as a beast and monster that should not exist, that should not procreate. He didn't want to know these feelings he was currently facing, nor did he want them to grow, because that means he would once again have to face the reality that the love that he wanted was out of reach and no longer available. So he once again chose the facade, and that facade caused him to take a life. When he shot Elizabeth, to me, it felt like he shot someone who was trying to understand and protect his reflection and understand his true feelings. But Victor didn't want to face it, causing his avoidance to lead to turmoil. Victor again chose resentment and tried to shatter the reflection he created, hunting the creature down and trying to get rid of him by any means. That is until Victor got worn down by it, because you can't get rid of what you truly feel no matter how hard you try. He finally decided to face it, and once he did, healing happened. He faced the hole that was in his heart and the hurt and anger he allowed to fill it. He no longer lied to himself about his motivations or what he wanted. He looked himself in the mirror and accepted who he was and who he had become. I also don't think it's a coincidence that came after Victor had been listened to and was allowed to truly mourn and express himself. After Victor's mother passed, he ran and didn't stop running, refusing to acknowledge the pain and loss he had felt and how truly alone he was. He refused to acknowledge the truth. His mother was gone. He finally faced this truth, and once he did, he allowed himself to heal and no longer bared his true feelings, the creature, and got to walk off into the sunset. I feel the creature is a metaphor for who Victor truly was deep down. The little boy who missed his mom, wanted her love, and just wanted to be heard. Victor is the creature, and the creature is Victor. The previous section where I analyzed the story and the characters, Victor and the creature, was probably a pretty obvious analysis, so I admit that this video is more of a video that shows appreciation to this film than it is to expand on some unsuspecting theme that I felt no one realized. Like I mentioned before, the monster films that I've seen always feel like they followed the themes that analyze oneself or society as a whole. Take for instance, The Mummy, released in 1999. Is one of my favorite monster movies. I genuinely feel it does not miss. I can watch this movie multiple times and not get tired of it, with some time in between though, because I don't like to rewatch movies a lot and in such a small time frame unless I have to. If we look at this film, it can be seen as an action adventure packed with some cool visuals and a really cool story, but it can also be seen as a film that has themes of how greed and a want for power can corrupt and destroy the masses, leading to a plague of innocent bloodshed, and how true love for one another can conquer that. But I will say, at the end of the day, it's just a really fun action adventure film that I remember having on VHS, but I'm not 1,000% sure, so don't take my word for it. Looking at all the stories of Dracula or just vampiric cinema in general, they can have themes of how humans long for a life where it is guaranteed for them to be able to find what they are looking for, whether that be love, purpose, youth, or just wanting a long life themselves, only to end up wishing that they could die because of an eternal life on a planet that goes through a lot of turmoil, and then probably having to watch everyone they care about slowly die around them. Well, the tragedy is endless. On top of that, having to constantly adapt to the changes of life and society forever, I feel can really do a number on someone's mental health. They always end up regretting their decision to be a vampire and long for relief, aka death, usually ending their story of them walking into the sun, turning into ashes, or bursting into flames, depending on the type of vampire. That's most likely the emotions that the creature will have to face because he literally cannot die. We can even look at Godzilla, released in 1954, and his themes on being a metaphor for nuclear war. According to the SHScourier.com's article titled The Symbolic Importance Behind Godzilla 1954 to the Present, released on May 16, 2023, 1954's Godzilla is more than a film. It's a lesson to humanity about the dangers of nuclear power. Then you have The Invisible Man, that can take on a theme of what would humans truly do if no one was watching, which was usually crime. And even the Wolfman or werewolf films overall can possibly have a theme of analyzing the way men process their inner emotions through anger because of the continuous pressure to be a man, in quotations, because of the harmful view that a man experiencing any other emotion outside of anger is emasculating, which I feel is especially apparent considering most werewolf films that have been made throughout cinema have always had a male to be the werewolf. So like these films, I feel Frankenstein 2025 takes on the theme of no longer running away from ourselves and facing our own reflection really well. It felt really inspiring to me, especially since we as humans do that often. Alright, I'm done taking y'all through this emotional roller coaster. But like I mentioned earlier, this was more of an appreciation video than it was an analysis of the film. I just felt inspired to talk about this film after seeing it. Maybe I'm in my feelings about it, but I'm okay with that. Leave me alone and let me feel them. And before I go, there's this one scene in the film that I found so funny. It was in the beginning when Victor was on the boat taking refuge and the creature was not having it. And I know it's not supposed to be funny, but I was thinking about what was going through the crew's mind when, after the creature's first attack, the captain was like, and this isn't exactly what he said, but he was like, "We will protect this man at all costs." And all I kept thinking while writing the script for this video was, if I was a crew member and I saw my crewmate, I've been riding on this boat with for, I know, at least a year because it's cold, travel was probably hectic back then, and I see this crewmate get his arm twisted like someone was trying to crank the old window of a 1990 Toyota Corolla station wagon. I'm taking Victor and I'm tossing that man overboard because we don't even know what he did. What if he provoked him, you know? Like, we don't know what this man did. I'm just playing, y'all, but let me know what you think about Frankenstein and the modern adaptations of monster movies. Was my analysis spot on, or did I kind of surprise you with my take on it? Do you think monster movies will make a comeback and lead the charge when it comes to horror films? I hope you enjoyed this venture off the path of the usual slasher film Final Girl Chit Chat into the world of monsters. I want to put another video out by the end of the year, but just in case I don't, I hope y'all have a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. And remember to keep it kind. Peace.